Hello and welcome again to What If Natives Won, a video blog and channel about alternate history and American Indians, Native Americans, indigenous peoples. This is the 25th video of 28 planned ones. My name is Carroll. I'm Associate Professor of History at Northern Virginia Community College. I've written mostly about wars, veterans, human rights, and genocide. I'm also, together with Rob Schmidt of Bluecorn Comics, editing and putting out a short story collection, What If Natives Won. This is what this video blog and channel are about. There's a huge lack of alternate history written about American Indians, indigenous people. Many people don't like to think about genocides in America. They likely were never taught about them. Many don't want to be reminded, want to believe these genocides never happened, or that it was an accident. I've had great success using alternate history to teach my students, show them absolutely nothing in history was inevitable. It never had to be. The worst of human history is always a conscious choice. How things turn out is based on how evil the evil choose to be, and how well and how strongly good people choose to stand up to them or stop them. The way things turned out in history took a very specific set of circumstances. Sometimes history turns on very small things. Change even one, you have an entirely different history, different present, different society. It may be hard to hear this, but we live right now in a dystopian world. One of the worst of all possible outcomes for anyone who is not white. America is today 98% non-native. At least 75 million to 112 million natives were killed by not one genocide, but a series of them, the last ending only in the year 2000. In Peru. Many more in America, Brazil, Canada, Guatemala, Argentina, and Mexico. On top of that is massive genocide denial. This is not taught in almost all American schools, and there are racist images everywhere that are often not admitted to be racist. But much of this could change if Reagan is never elected or dies from assassination in 1981. How will this affect Latin American Indians? Reagan is a hero to many conservatives. The last time they had a popular president. Part of his popularity came from his rigid anti-communism, which began when he was an informer during McCarthyism. He was the most paranoid president the U.S. ever had until Trump. This is a man who thought communists were everywhere, even accusing the founder of modern conservatism, Barry Goldwater, of being a dupe for Fidel Castro. Driven by fanaticism and paranoia, Reagan kept seeing communist conspiracy where there was none. The place that suffered the most from Reagan's hysteria was Central America. The U.S. had long been invading and overthrowing Latin American governments, mostly because American businesses asked them to. But no U.S. president caused a higher death toll than Reagan. In Nicaragua, a broad popular coalition of business, labor, churches, students, and a few Marxists overthrew the brutal Somoza family dictatorship, kept in power by the U.S. for 50 years. Because a few were Marxist, Reagan set up the Contra-terrorists who killed tens of thousands of civilians, bombing and raping. Mosquito natives were also recruited by the Contras, caught in the middle between them and the government, as discussed in video 23. In El Salvador, a coalition of farmers, natives, students, and others, including a few Marxists, tried to overthrow the military dictatorship backed by the U.S. Again, Reagan thought a few communists in a group made them all evil commies. So U.S. planes bombed El Salvador from the Panama Canal Zone. U.S.-backed death squads killed over 80,000, including a group of American nuns. Worst of all was outright genocide against Mayas in Guatemala. A fanatic fundamentalist general, Efraim Rios Montt, thought he was sent by God to fight communists and Indians. So in facing three small guerrilla movements of a few thousand, he ordered the mass murder of over 500 Mayan villages he imagined to be on the side of communism. The genocide was so devastating, Guatemala was the only Latin American nation to lose population. Reagan gave Rios Montt money, weapons, and training, his administration claiming the genocide was all a communist lie, and Rios Montt a man of great integrity. The genocide only ended because other Guatemalan generals overthrew him. Rios Montt made the economy crash from losing so many people. Obviously, the easiest way to stop most or all of this is if Reagan was never president. He won the 1980 election because Jimmy Carter was very unpopular. But Carter had been quite popular for his first 3 years in office. His popularity dropped because of the Iran hostage crisis. 52 Americans in the U.S. Embassy were held hostage by Iranian guerrillas for over a year. Carter sent in elite American troops, the Delta Force, to rescue the hostages. It failed when 2 of their helicopters crashed. If the rescue attempt succeeds, Carter likely wins re-election. Carter would not create contra-terrorists as Reagan did. Carter would make every effort to end genocide in Guatemala and repression in El Salvador, not collaborate as Reagan did. The other way to prevent some of these atrocities is if Reagan is killed by his assassin. In our own time, the assassin, John Hinckley, used a small caliber .22 revolver to shoot Reagan in 1981, only 5 months after he became president. Even so, 1 bullet came close to Reagan's heart. If Reagan had turned slightly differently, or if Hinckley had used a larger caliber weapon, Reagan could be killed. Reagan's vice president was G.H.W. Bush, Bush Sr. Bush Sr. had been a congressman, a UN ambassador, and director of the CIA. He was as dedicated anti-communist as Reagan was, but he was more skilled and less paranoid, blind, and out of touch. Reagan refused any end to the Cold War, even though Soviet leaders offered to end it very early because he was following the advice of his astrologer. Seriously, this is what numerous Reagan advisors describe. Bush would end the Cold War sooner, 3 to 7 years. Bush would end support for El Salvador's dictatorship sooner. He would either end support sooner or perhaps not continue with the creation of contra-terrorists at all. Bush would have no part in outright genocide in Guatemala. That does not stop the genocide completely. Rios Montt is still a bigoted fanatic. But U.S. weapons are not being used. U.S. propaganda is not claiming it's not happening. It ends sooner with an earlier overthrow of Rios Montt and a lower death toll, 1/3 to 1/2 less. A genocide ended sooner, up to half its victims saved. The Salvadoran Civil War ends sooner. Contra-terrorism does also, and perhaps never even starts. All of these certainly count as native victory. This is the end of the 25th video. I look forward to your comments and questions, and will answer them as often as I can. Racism, genocide denial, childish behavior, personal attacks get deleted. But I do recognize some questions will be asked in ignorance because much of the facts I point to are new to most people. They were never taught about this. They've been raised in denial since denying indigenous genocides is taught in almost all public schools. Next time we'll discuss what if Peru's dictator Fujimori was overthrown. Please repost freely, like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'll post again in about a week. This has been What If Natives Won video blog and channel.